Good morning. These are your Tribune highlights for Thursday, January 29th and 2026, brought to you by your Daily Bahamas headlines. We begin with the main story dominating today's front page, where the proposed Grand Bahama power deal continues to draw sharp political and public criticism. The Tribune reports that critics in Grand Bahama say residents are being used as puppets in what they describe as a politically driven power deal, despite there being no finalized agreement in place. Prime Minister Philip Brave Davis announced the government's intention to acquire Grand Bahama Power Company, but opponents argue the process lacks transparency and clarity. Business leaders and political figures are calling for the government to table all details, including the financing, ownership structure, and management arrangements before moving forward. Concerns remain about electricity reliability, the financial burden on taxpayers, and whether the announcement was premature. The issue continues to dominate national discussion, with calls for fuller disclosure and meaningful consultation with Grand Bahama residents. Turning now to the front page of the business section, businesses are sounding the alarm over government bills and unpaid payables. The Tribune reports that the absence of offsets between government receivables and payables is taking a serious toll on business cash flow. Accountants and business leaders warn that delays in government payments are creating financial strain, forcing some companies into uncomfortable positions with taxes, VAT filings, and operational expenses. There are renewed calls for reforms that would allow businesses to net off amounts owed to and from the government, easing pressure on already stretched cash flows. Also in business, there are fears that the proposed Grand Bahama Power acquisition could shift the financial burden onto taxpayers. Business leaders caution that unless structural issues are addressed, including the cost of infrastructure upgrades and operational inefficiencies, consumers and taxpayers could ultimately pay the price. In other business news, MSC Cruises has unveiled a major new expansion at Ocean Cay. The project includes extended docking facilities and enhanced visitor experiences, with the company projecting increased cruise calls and economic benefits for the Bahamas. Officials say the development reflects confidence in the country's tourism product and its long-term growth potential. Meanwhile, Atlantis has announced new leadership for its Cove and Reef resorts, naming a new chief to oversee operations, as the resort group focuses on service excellence and continued recovery in the tourism sector. In public sector news, Cabinet has approved overtime payments for Public Hospitals Authority workers following union backlash. The approval comes after delays sparked frustration among healthcare workers, with officials acknowledging communication breakdowns and pledging improvements going forward. On the streets, taxi drivers have soundly rejected an Uber-style approach, with union leaders saying the model is not workable under current laws and insurance requirements. Taxi representatives argue that ride-sharing platforms would undermine the regulated taxi industry and raise concerns about passenger safety and fairness. On page 3, animal welfare advocates warn that weak enforcement is fueling the country's stray dog crisis. Advocates say failure to enforce existing animal welfare laws has led to uncontrolled breeding, increased attacks, and growing public safety concerns. The Tribune also reports that the Public Hospitals Authority has approved health care over time after union pressure, and that political tensions continue as leaders clash over carbon credit legislation and environmental policy. In today's editorial, the Tribune argues that the government jumped the gun on the Grand Bahama Power announcement. The editorial says announcing such a major deal without finalized terms undermines public trust and fuels uncertainty. It calls for transparency, accountability, and respect for the public's right to know before major national decisions are presented as fate's accomplice. Letters to the editor echo similar concerns. Residents write about unreliable water supplies, poor enforcement of animal welfare laws, road safety issues, and frustration with governance failures. Several letters stress that citizens deserve reliable utilities, clear communication, and leadership that prioritizes everyday needs over political posturing. That's your Tribune highlights for today. To read the full stories and additional coverage, please pick up a copy of the Tribune or visit their platforms for today's complete edition. Enjoy your day, be blessed, and be a blessing.